That Christmas Eve, my stepmother didn't just beat me under the tree. She did it in front of 50 guests, a gospel choir, and a $10,000 ice sculpture of a reindeer. My father pretended not to see. My uncle poured her crystal punch bowl of eggnog over her hair like holy water. And then he reached into his jacket, pulled out something that made the entire room gasp, and made me realize I'd never really known my own family at all. My name is Aubrey Calloway. I am 32 years old, and my feet already ache in these 4-inch heels. I'm standing near a massive pane of glass, pretending to admire the snow dusting the grounds of Harrington Heights while the cold seeps through the window. A stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the grand hall. This is Christmas Eve. The air inside is thick, almost suffocating, a potent mix of expensive pine from the tree that scrapes the vaulted ceiling, mulled wine from a silver tureen, and the cloying, expensive perfume Lydia favors. It smells like money and denial. A live string quartet is tucked near the grand staircase, valiantly sawing their way through Vivaldi's Winter, but they are utterly drowned out by the braying laughter and self-important chatter of 50 of the state's elite. Doctors, lawyers, judges, and the kind of business owners who inherit, rather than build. The sound is a physical weight. Across the room, the $10,000 ice sculpture of a reindeer, Lydia's non-negotiable centerpiece, is already weeping onto an antique Persian rug, a metaphor if I ever saw one. It's all breathtakingly opulent, a magazine spread of holiday perfection, and I paid for almost all of it. The check for the caterers, who are currently circulating with trays of oysters and caviar, was drawn from my account, the wire transfer for the band, the invoice for the lighting designer who made sure the tree, a 20-foot behemoth, glittered just so, the ice sculpture, even the cases of vintage champagne that Evan is currently pouring too generously. I funded this entire performance, yet I stand here, a ghost at my own feast, holding a glass of sparkling water and trying to regulate my breathing. I watch my father, Graham Calloway, move through the crowd. He is 65 but maintains the facade of 50. His silver hair is perfect. His tuxedo is bespoke. He is the image of retired, respectable power. He invented the role of the charming, affable patriarch. He catches my eye, smiles that easy, empty smile, and gives me a small wave, a gesture one gives to a colleague's cousin, before turning back to laugh at something Judge Miller said. He is my father, but he has not truly seen me in 15 years. To him, my position as Chief Technology Officer at Ironwall Sentinel Labs, a leader in global cybersecurity, is not the result of sleepless nights, a mathematics degree earned on scholarship, or a relentless, brutal climb in a male-dominated field. It is, in his words, a lucky break, a fascinating little hobby that just happened to work out, a hobby that, conveniently, now funds his entire lifestyle. And then there is the architect of this evening, the queen of the estate, Lydia Cross Calloway. She is a vision in emerald green silk, a dress that cost more than my first car, with diamonds at her throat that catch the light and fracture it into 1,000 sharp pieces. She is performing, her laughter a delicate, practiced trill, her hand resting lightly on the arm of a state senator. She is warmth, she is grace, she is the beating heart of this home. Until she looks at me, her eyes scan the room, cataloging her guests, and for a split second, they lock with mine. The smile doesn't fade. It snaps off, like a light switch. The warmth vanishes, replaced by an icy calculation, a quick, cold assessment that takes in my dress, my posture, my very presence, finds it wanting, and dismisses me. She turns back to the senator, the radiant smile instantly restored, and I am once again erased. She is the mistress of this house, this party, this life, a life she built on my father's weakness and, increasingly, my bank account. Glued to her side, basking in her reflected glory, is her son, Evan Cross. He's somewhere in his late 30s, though he dresses like a 20-year-old tech bro with designer sneakers that look ridiculous with his blazer. Evan is the startup visionary, a title he's clung to through a spectacular series of failures. There was the high-end juicery that went under in 6 months, the disastrous app that was meant to be the Uber for dog walkers, and now, his latest obsession, blockchain-enabled artisanal coffee. A concept so absurd it would be laughable if it wasn't burning through money at an astonishing rate. He is the future of this family, I hear Lydia coo to a cluster of neighbors, her voice full of maternal pride. His mind just moves so fast. Evan, overhearing, just smirks and sips his champagne, his eyes already scanning the room for his next investor. Though he knows his real seed funding comes from me. There is one person not participating in the charade, leaning against a far wall, deliberately positioned behind a towering poinsettia arrangement as if to block himself from view, is the family's official black sheep, Uncle Patrick Hale. He is my father's younger brother. Though they share no resemblance in temperament, Patrick is in a simple, dark suit that looks clean but rumpled, holding a heavy tumbler of what is definitely not sparkling cider. The Calloway side of the family, led by Lydia, treats him as the court jester, the lovable loser. He runs a small electronics repair shop, a hands-on, unglamorous job that Lydia finds deeply embarrassing. Such a shame, she often says. He never applied himself, but I know Patrick. I watch his eyes, which are never still. They aren't watching the band or the food. They are tracking Lydia. They see the way she guides my father, the way her hand tightens on his arm when a specific topic comes up. Patrick sees the wiring, the code running beneath the surface. He is the only other person in this room who speaks my language. Graham, Lydia, what an absolute triumph, a woman in blinding sequins exclaims, her voice piercing the din. She kisses the air near Lydia's cheek. This is the party of the decade. Your generosity is simply boundless. Lydia inclines her head, accepting the compliment as her due. Oh, we just adore bringing family together, she murmurs, her voice a velvet lie. It's what Christmas is all about, isn't it? Family. I am the invisible ATM. I am the silent, uncredited executive producer of their reality show. I am the family she speaks of, but only when the bills are due. Lydia spots me hovering near the doorway. A tactical error on my part. I was trying to remain unnoticed. She sees her opening. "Oh, Aubrey, darling," she calls, her voice suddenly bright and sharp. She glides over, a shark in silk, and hooks her arm through mine, her grip surprisingly strong. She pulls me toward Dr. Harrison, a neurosurgeon with a massive endowment at the local hospital. "Doctor, you simply must meet Aubrey. This is Graham's daughter," she announces, as if presenting a peculiar pet. "A pleasure," Dr. Harrison says, smiling politely. "Aubrey is just so clever," Lydia continues, her tone dripping with false pride that is really just condescension. "She does. Something with computers. Tell him, dear." "I'm the CTO at Ironwall Sentinel Labs," I say, my voice flat. "Doctor," Harrison's eyebrows raise. "Ironwall? Really? My hospital just contracted with you. Your reputation is formidable." Lydia, sensing she is losing control of the narrative, tightens her grip on my arm. Yes, she's just wonderful at typing. So focused. We're all so proud she has such a stable hobby. She pats my arm, a gesture of dismissal, and then seamlessly pivots, steering the doctor away from me and toward her son. "Now, you must meet Evan. He's the real visionary. He's about to revolutionize the coffee industry." I am left in her wake, the scent of her perfume lingering like an insult. I let her go. I don't correct her. I don't tell the doctor that my hobby just identified and neutralized a ransomware attack that would have cost his hospital millions. I just stand there, tasting the metallic tang of adrenaline under the sweetness of the spiced cider I'm not drinking. She thinks I'm the same cowed teenager I was 15 years ago. She thinks I am still the girl who would run to her room and cry after one of her casual, cruel dismissals. She thinks she has won. But she's wrong. Tonight, I'm not here to absorb the blows. I'm not here to be the dutiful daughter or the convenient stepsister. I didn't come here to eat dry turkey and exchange expensive, meaningless gifts. I didn't come here to be tolerated. I came here to end the game that's been played at my expense for a decade and a half. A game where the rules change, but I always lose. Tonight, I am changing the board. The quartet transitions from Vivaldi to a somber, dragging rendition of O Holy Night, as if summoned by my resolve. Uncle Patrick materializes at my elbow. He presses a heavy crystal tumbler into my hand, displacing the untouched water. The scent of strong bourbon and nutmeg hits me. "You look like you need this," he murmurs, his gaze fixed over my shoulder, tracking Lydia as she directs the choir into position on the stairs. He keeps his voice low, a gravelly rumble that cuts through the festive noise. "Are you sure you want to go all the way with this, kid? No turning back after tonight." His words are not a warning. They are a final confirmation. He is my only ally. He and I are the only ones in this room of 50 people who know the truth of the evening. We are the only ones who know the script is about to be violently, permanently rewritten. "There's no other way. Uncle Patrick," I say, my voice equally low. My hand is steady on the glass. I look at the tree. It is magnificent. A monument to my father's and Lydia's performance of wealth. It is buried in presents, hundreds of them, boxes wrapped in shimmering gold foil and tied with thick velvet ribbons. Gifts for everyone, gifts that represent the peace and goodwill Lydia loves to broadcast. I think about the small, plain box I brought, the one currently hidden in the pocket of my wool coat in the cloakroom, not under the tree. I think about the forged documents Lydia has waiting on my father's desk, the ones she thinks I'll sign after dessert, the ones that will give her and Evan final, irrevocable control. I realize some gifts, once unwrapped, can never be put back in the box. Some truths, once spoken, can't be unheard. The festive paper is about to be torn away, and what's underneath is ugly, sharp, and final. I take a sip of the eggnog. It's strong, and it burns all the way down, stealing my spine. "She's not going to make this easy," I say, stating the obvious. Patrick snorts, a short, humorless sound. "She never does." I watch Lydia adjust her diamond earrings, practicing her surprised and delighted face for the gift-opening ceremony. If I had known, with absolute certainty, that in less than an hour she would physically raise her hand to me under that perfect, glittering tree, I probably still would have come. I just would have worn a dress that was easier to run in. The bourbon-laced eggnog is still sharp on my tongue. It's the same recipe Lydia has served for 15 years, heavy on the nutmeg and cheap bourbon. Served in expensive crystal. The first time I tasted it, I was 16. That was the first Christmas she truly owned. The first Christmas that was no longer ours. My mother, Ellen, had been gone just over a year. She died in the spring, a slow, agonizing surrender to a disease that stole her breath and then her life. My father was adrift, a ghost in his own house, and I was 17, trying to navigate my own grief while holding his hand. He was lost, and then he was found. Graham Calloway remarried in 13 months. Lydia Cross entered our lives, not like a new family member, but like a corporate restructuring specialist. She arrived with a perfect, laminated smile, a wardrobe of cashmere, and a son, Evan, who immediately sized up my bedroom. She brought expensive, beautifully wrapped gifts for that first Christmas, presenting them with a flourish, and I remember feeling a cold stone of dread in my stomach. The house, our house, didn't stand a chance. It was a blitzkrieg of tasteful renovation. My mother's favorite armchair, the one with the worn floral print and the dip in the cushion from where she always sat, was the first to go. It was donated, replaced by a rigid, beige Scandinavian thing that Lydia had seen in a magazine. The small framed photos on the mantelpiece, my mom and me at the lake, her laughing, her hair wild, my parents on their wedding day. They disappeared one by one. First, they were moved to a side table, then to the upstairs hall. Then, they were just gone. In their place, a single, massive, professionally shot portrait of the new Calloway family: Graham, Lydia, Evan, and me. I was tucked in the back row, my smile looking less like a smile and more like a grimace. But Christmas was her true masterpiece. My mother's Christmas had been chaos: mismatched ornaments collected over 20 years, strings of popcorn, and an angel she'd made in a high school pottery class that was objectively ugly but was always, always at the top of the tree. Lydia's Christmas was a theme. One year it was winter white and silver, the next, Scottish Highland, complete with grotesque amounts of plaid, the third, minimalist Nordic. Every ornament, every ribbon, every light was curated, purchased in bulk, and sterile. Our home wasn't a home, it was a set piece. She never laid a hand on me. She didn't have to. Lydia's weapons were her words, and she wielded them with the precision of a surgeon. She beat me with comparisons, with backhanded compliments, with the careful surgical application of disappointment. I was 17 when I brought home a report card with 5 A's and 1 B+ in advanced calculus. I was proud. I'd worked for that B+. I showed it to my father at dinner. Lydia, sipping her Chardonnay, glanced at it from across the table. "Oh, Aubrey, still focusing on those dry old numbers. How diligent." She turned her radiant smile to Evan, who had just managed to pass basic algebra. "Evan, darling, tell your father about the marketing plan you designed for the debate team." Evan mumbled something about logos. "He just has a mind for people," Lydia beamed. "For vision. Some people are just workers, you know? And that's perfectly fine. We need workers." She commented on my clothes, bought with my own babysitting money. "Those jeans are practical, dear, but don't you want a boy to notice you? You're not getting any younger. Evan needs new Nikes. Graham, the best ones. It's important for his confidence, for his brand." In front of the entire extended family, during the Christmas Eve appetizer hour, she'd put her arm around me, a gesture that looked like affection but felt like a vice. "Aubrey is our little academic," she'd announced to my aunts and uncles. "She doesn't have that spark, you know, that shine. But bless her, she tries so hard. It's just, she'll never be the one to light up a room." And everyone would chuckle, a gentle, pitying sound that felt like acid being poured on my skin. The gift opening ceremony on Christmas morning was her high court, and she was the judge. Evan's pile was a mountain: the latest gaming console, a new laptop, a check for $500 just for fun. 1 year. It was the keys to a brand new car, because his old one was the wrong color. My gifts were always wrapped in the less impressive paper. They were thoughtful. They were lessons. 1 year. I received The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was 16. The next year, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The year after that, a book on dressing for success, though my success was clearly not the kind she valued. The tag, in her perfect looping script, always read, "To help you find your way, dear." It wasn't a gift. It was an accusation. I was lacking. I was wrong. My father? He tried, at first. "Lydia, that's not necessary," he'd murmur when she criticized my high school programming club. "Aubrey is very smart." "Of course she is. Darling," Lydia would purr, placing her hand on his, her nails a perfect blood-red manicure, a silent, sharp warning. "I'm just worried about her. I'm worried she'll end up lonely. I'm trying to help her. Don't you want me to help your daughter?" And the fight would just drain out of him. He'd sigh, retreat into his newspaper or his study, and the silence would be his answer. He wanted peace. Lydia offered a very simple, very clear price for domestic tranquility: my silence, my compliance, my erasure. So I learned to swallow the tears. I learned to smile when I opened the self-help books. "Thank you, Lydia. It's very useful." Only Patrick saw it. He was the only one who didn't buy the performance. After the main gift ceremony, when Lydia was basking in praise for her perfectly managed family and Evan was counting his cash, Patrick would find me. He'd pull me into the pantry or the cold garage, under the guise of looking for more firewood. "That was a load of crap," he'd mutter, pulling a small, crumpled envelope from the pocket of his old vest. "Here." Inside would be $100 bill, sometimes two. "This is from your mom, Ellen," he'd say, his voice rough. "She'd want you to buy that computer thing you were talking about, not that self-help garbage. Don't let her turn you into her." He'd always have a real gift for me, too, usually, a box of cheap, thick wool socks, because he knew my dorm was cold. The envelope would be tucked inside the box. "Just in case she's watching," he'd wink. He was the first person who taught me about security. When it was time for college applications, the war escalated. "Cybersecurity?" Lydia scoffed, holding my acceptance letter to a state university known for its tech program. She held it as if it were contaminated. "Graham, that's not for a woman. It's dirty. All those strange men in dark rooms. She should be in public relations, like I was. Something with grace. She'll never find a husband in that field." I went anyway. I took the scholarship. I packed my bags. And that's when the manipulation shifted. Subtly but decisively. It was no longer about my personality. It was about my ingratitude. I'd call home from my dorm, exhausted from a 24-hour coding session, and Lydia would get on the phone, her voice a heavy, disappointed sigh. "Aubrey, your father is very worried about you. This stubbornness, it's giving him headaches, his blood pressure. You know, he had to lie down all afternoon. He's just so stressed." My success became a weapon she used against me. My achievements were not accomplishments. They were burdens I was selfishly placing on my father. "He just wants you to be happy and normal. Dear," she'd say. "But you insist on this difficult path. It's breaking his heart." I started to believe it. I started to think that my ambition was a form of cruelty. I'd come home for Christmas from my first job, and the performance would be in full swing. Lydia, holding court by the fireplace, her voice ringing with pride. "Evan is in talks with venture capitalists," she'd announce, even if his sock was just him cornering someone at a bar. "He's just waiting for the right moment. He has such a brilliant future, a true leader." Then she'd turn to me, her smile tightening. "And Aubrey is here, still doing her little computer thing, such a stable salary. It's wonderful, isn't it? Not everyone is built for vision." The real turning point, the moment the seed for tonight was planted, was 3 Christmases ago. I had just gotten my first significant promotion at Ironwall, my first 6-figure salary. Lydia had insisted on handling all the family finances, claiming my father was too tired and too confused by online banking. We were at the dining table, the ruins of the feast between us. Lydia brought in the mail. "Oh, goodness," she sighed, fanning herself with an envelope. "Graham, darling, the December credit card statement is here. My. She accidentally opened it. "Lydia, not at the table," my father protested weakly. No, it's fine," she said, her eyes scanning the page, her expression one of perfect, practiced concern. "It's just all these expenses, the club fees, the new roof. It's just so much pressure on you." She paused. It was a flawless dramatic beat. Her gaze landed on me, a calculated, thoughtful look, as if the idea had just that second occurred to her. "Aubrey, dear," she said, her voice soft as snow. "You're doing so well now. That stable job. If you just knew how to be helpful, you could probably pay this whole thing off with one of your paychecks, couldn't you? It would be such a load off your father's mind, after all he's done for you." My father didn't say no. He didn't look at me. He just stared at his plate. And in that awful, ringing silence, I became the solution. I was no longer the difficult daughter. I was the resource. From that day on, Christmas wasn't about family. It was my annual performance review. It was the moment the budget was presented. Lydia turned the holiday, with all its associated guilt and obligations of family, into her primary weapon of financial extraction. The tinsel and the carols and the perfectly roasted turkey were just camouflage. They were the ribbons and lights she used to disguise the fact that she was methodically, brilliantly, and ruthlessly seizing control of my father's assets and my income. Uncle Patrick saw it all. He tried to warn Graham. I'd overhear them, their voices raised from behind the closed study door. "Graham, she's bleeding you dry, and she's using Aubrey to do it. You're letting her." And my father's reply, always the same, tired and afraid. "Patrick, you're being dramatic. Lydia is just trying to manage things. You always have to turn everything into a tragedy." Patrick was dismissed. He was the loser, the failure. What could he possibly know about money? He knew. He knew exactly what he was seeing. And he knew that one day, my father's tragic flaw, his weakness, would force a choice. He just set himself up to be ready when that day finally came. I graduated from that state university with honors, a full scholarship, and zero debt, thanks to 3 years of working the graveyard shift at the campus IT help desk. I didn't take $1 from my father after my freshman year. I couldn't stand the way Lydia looked at me when I asked for textbook money, as if I were stealing food from her table. While Lydia was teaching Evan how to network by funding his golf club membership, I was learning how to trace a packet capture and identify a SQL injection attack at 3 a.m, fueled by stale coffee and vending machine chips. My first job was junior analyst at a small firm. Then I moved to Ironwall Sentinel Labs, a place where merit actually mattered. I worked. I didn't just work hard. I worked with a singular, obsessive focus. I reverse-engineered malware on my weekends. I found zero-day exploits in systems everyone thought were secure. In 8 years, I went from analyst to team lead, to department head, to chief technology officer. My life became a series of secure servers, encrypted data, and complex logical problems. I earned a high 6-figure salary. I had stock options that were worth more than my father's house. I had built a fortress around myself, professionally and financially. Meanwhile, back at Harrington Heights, Evan was finding himself and disrupting industries. His ventures were a masterclass in burning other people's money. His first startup was a chain of ACAI bowl cafes. It failed in less than a year because he spent the entire operating budget on a launch party with a D-list celebrity. Lydia, of course, spun this as a triumph. It was such a valuable learning experience. She'd tell her friends over brunch. Evan learned so much about branding. He's just pivoting. His pivot was an app, a disastrous attempt at a high-end dating service for people who valued exclusivity. It never launched. But the development team, which seemed to consist of his college roommate, managed to spend over $100,000 on user interface research in Miami. His latest failure, before the current artisanal coffee nonsense, was a bespoke t-shirt line. He had boxes of 500 shirts with a gold foil logo of a lion, or maybe it was a wolf, piled up in my father's garage, all of them misspelled. "The textile market is just so volatile," Lydia would explain, her voice full of knowing sadness. He was simply ahead of his time. I lived in my own condo, 2 towns over. I had my own life, but the financial umbilical cord, the one Lydia had attached to me, was long and elastic. The first big withdrawal was for $50,000. Lydia called me, weeping, not small, polite tears, but great, gulping, theatrical sobs. "Aubrey, darling, it's the house. Your father, he made a bad investment. A little cash flow problem. The bank. They're making threats." The house, not a house. The house, the one I grew up in. The one where my mother planted the roses that Lydia had promptly ripped out. The one that held the last echoes of my real family. "They're threatening to foreclose. Aubrey, your childhood home. I can't bear to see him this broken. He just sits in his study. He won't even talk to me." A $50,000 wire transfer. I told myself it was for my father. I told myself it was to protect my mother's memory. to keep that last piece of her safe. "You've saved us," Lydia whispered to me over the phone 2 days later, her voice brimming with tearful gratitude. "You are a true Calloway, a blessing." That loan was never mentioned again. It was as if it never happened. 6 months later, the blessing was called upon again. This time it was $120,000. "It's the property taxes," Lydia explained, her voice crisp and businesslike this time. The performance of helplessness was over. This was a transaction. "Graham forgot to pay them for 2 years on the lake property. Can you imagine? Silly man. If we don't clear it, the county will seize it, and it's meant to be Evan's inheritance. I did the transfer. I was protecting my father from his own oversight. I reasoned. I was protecting the family assets. The requests became a quarterly event, a new roof, a misunderstanding with the IRS, a medical bill for Evan, who had broken his leg, researching ski lift technology for another venture. Then came the big one, $250,000. This time, there was no pretense, no tears. Lydia called a family meeting at the house, just me, her, Evan, and my father. She served coffee and laid out a prospectus Evan had printed at a copy shop. It was for the artisanal coffee blockchain nonsense. "This is it, Aubrey," Evan said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with the messianic light of the truly clueless. "This is the one. We're getting in on the ground floor. We're talking a 50x return in 18 months. We just need to secure the initial seed capital." "Evan, this makes no sense," I said, pointing to a graph that was literally just a green arrow pointing up. "This isn't a business plan. It's a wish." "Aubrey," Lydia's voice was sharp, cutting. "You don't understand vision. You understand code. You understand sitting in a dark room and clicking keys. This is about relationships, about building a brand. This is the opportunity of a lifetime." "I'm not investing in this," I said flatly. "It's not an investment," Lydia snapped. "It's for your family." "I'm not his family," I said, looking at Evan, who was already checking his phone. Lydia's face softened, a chilling, strategic maneuver. "No," she said, her voice turning to honey. You're his older sister." I looked at my father. He had been silent, stirring his coffee, staring at the spoon as if it held the secrets to the universe. "Graham? Dad? You can't possibly think this is a good idea." He finally looked up. His eyes were tired, gray, and completely empty of the man who used to read me stories. "Aubrey," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "Evan hasn't had your advantages. He hasn't had your lucky breaks. It's your duty to help him, to provide a platform. He's your brother, for all intents and purposes. We are a family. You should do this." It was the duty that broke me. The older sister, the casual, complete dismissal of my entire life's work as a lucky break. I wrote the check, $250,000. I went home to my sterile, quiet condo, opened a new spreadsheet on my encrypted drive, and created a new tab. I titled it The Calloway Fund. I entered every date, every amount, every reason Lydia had given. I backdated it to the first $50,000 transfer. The total was staggering. It was close to 7 figures. It was a digital ledger of my own stupidity, my own desperate hope that I could buy my father's love. Lydia, emboldened, stopped asking. She started telling. "Aubrey, your father and I are joining the country club. The initiation fee is a bit steep, but it's crucial for Evan's networking. The check needs to be for $25,000. Aubrey, I'm sending you the invoice for the party planners. Pay it by Friday." She started talking about my money as if it were hers. "It's so easy for you, isn't it?" she mused one day at the house, watching me fix her new, ridiculously expensive smart home hub. "You just tap a few buttons, and the money appears. It's not like real work, not like the sweat your father put in for 40 years to build this house." I kept signing the checks, but I also kept meticulous records. The paranoia, the part of my brain that Ironwall Labs paid me so well for, was screaming. I was signing things too. Small things. At first. Just a form for the bank, dear, to show you're helping with the household accounts. Just a little thing for the lawyers, to simplify the estate. I signed them, because my father was sitting right there, nodding, telling me it was fine. It's just family paperwork. Aubrey, don't be difficult. The wake-up call came from the one person Lydia couldn't fool. She's bragging, Uncle Patrick said, his voice crackling over the phone. I hadn't spoken to him in months. Lydia had made it clear he wasn't welcome at the house when important family matters were being discussed. What are you talking about, Uncle? I was at the hardware store, he said. Ran into her friend, that woman with the poodle. Lydia's been telling everyone, she said, and I quote, I've turned her into a lifelong sponsor, and the poor, stupid girl still calls me her stepmother. She thinks you're her personal foundation. Kid, she's not just taking your money. She's laughing at you. That was the first crack in the ice. Every time I tried to set a boundary, to say no, Lydia would deploy her nuclear option. My mother. I just don't think I can fund the new patio. Lydia. A hand would fly to her chest. Her eyes would fill with tears. I understand. It's just, I know Ellen. I know how much she believed in family. She would be so heartbroken to see this division, to see you putting your money, your things, above your father's happiness. She would have wanted you all to be close. She used my mother's memory as a crowbar to pry open my wallet. And God help me, it worked. Every single time. The final, fatal crack came on a Tuesday. I was at the Harrington house. My father had called, panicked, because the Wi-Fi was down, and Lydia couldn't stream her yoga class. I was the computer girl, so I was summoned. I was in my father's study, running diagnostics on the router. It was a simple firmware update. As the system rebooted, I did a quick sweep of the network, just to make sure there were no security vulnerabilities. It was an old habit. That's when I saw it, an open email, visible on the network sniffer, sent from Lydia's laptop to an email address I didn't recognize. A lawyer, not the family's longtime attorney. The subject line was, Re Graham Calloway Estate, Evan. I shouldn't have read it. It was a violation of a dozen privacy ethics, but it was my name, my father's name, on the screen. My fingers moved of their own accord. I opened the packet capture. The text of the email solidified in front of me. Need to accelerate the timeline. Graham is getting wobbly. We must finalize the new trust structure before the holidays. The goal is to make Evan the primary, non-revocable beneficiary of the real estate assets. We can leave Aubrey the sentimental items and a small, token cash distribution, enough to prevent her from contesting. Her recent erratic behavior and lack of engagement with the family should be more than enough justification. We need to protect Evan from her instability. My instability, my erratic behavior, my lack of engagement. She was painting me as unstable, as a threat, while systematically draining my accounts. She was using my money to pay a lawyer to write me out of my own father's will, a will that was being funded by me. I sat there in the leather chair that still smelled faintly of my father's old pipe tobacco, and the world went cold. The air in my lungs turned to ice. It wasn't just greed. It was a complete, systematic takedown. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. My training took over. I copied the packet. I traced the lawyer's email address. I did a quick, quiet search on his firm. I put a silent forward on all emails from Lydia's machine that contained the words will, trust, Aubrey, or Evan. I backed up the router logs. I took a high-resolution screenshot of the email. I saved everything to a multi-encrypted drive, which I then uploaded to a secure cloud server that not even I could access without a two-factor key I kept in a bank vault. I finished the router update. I reset the Wi-Fi. It's all fixed. Lydia, I called out, my voice sounding sickeningly normal, cheerful even. I went home, and I started to build my case. For weeks, I lived a double life. I was the dutiful, if erratic, daughter on the phone, and I was a forensic investigator at night. I collected every email, every text message, every bank transfer. I built a timeline, I cross-referenced Lydia's business trips with Evan's startup needs. The pattern was undeniable. Even then, even with a mountain of evidence that would have convicted her in any court, I hesitated. This was my family. This was my father. I still held on to some toxic, stupid sliver of hope that I could fix this, that I could sit my father down, show him the printouts, and he would wake up, see the monster he had married, and, what, apologize? Thank me? I held off on calling a lawyer. I told myself I would handle it. After Christmas, one more Christmas, I would go to the party, I would smile, I would not let her win. And then, 1 week ago, I overheard the phone call. I was dropping off a required Christmas donation check at the house. I let myself in, and I heard Lydia's voice from the kitchen, sharp and triumphant. She was talking to Evan. "Stop panicking," she said, her voice a low hiss. "It's all handled. I found a template of her signature from one of the bank forms she signed. It's perfect. The authorization papers are on Graham's desk right now, mixed in with the Christmas cards. He'll sign anything I put in front of him. And as for Aubrey, she'll sign too. I'll tell her it's a loyalty pledge. She'll cry, she'll sign, and by New Year's, the Aspen cabin will be in your name. She's a machine. Evan, you just have to know which buttons to push." Forged, my signature, a template. That was it. That was the moment the floor fell away. That was when I stopped being a daughter and became an opponent. I backed out of the house, my heart hammering a brutal rhythm against my ribs, got in my car, and made the first call. Not to my father, not to Patrick. I called Monica Reyes, the best damn financial crimes attorney in the state, the one whose firm I had just saved from a data breach. "Monica," I said, my voice shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "I have a problem, and I have a lot of data. I need you to help me lock the door and burn the house down." The phone call to Monica Reyes was the first shot fired in a war Lydia didn't even know I had declared. But that phone call was only possible because of what happened on Thanksgiving. It was late, close to 10 at night. The big, performative dinner was over. My father was asleep in his armchair, and Lydia and Evan had gone out to a networking event at the country club. I was only there because, once again, the Harrington guest Wi-Fi had gone down, and Lydia was furious that her friends couldn't post their turkey photos to Instagram. I was in my father's study, kneeling by the router, a familiar, humiliating position. I ran the usual diagnostics, but something was buggy. The network was logging unusual traffic spikes from an unrecognized MAC address, a device that wasn't on the family network, but was hardwired into the port in my father's desk, a port I, myself, had installed years ago. "Curious," I murmured to the empty room. I logged into the router's admin panel. The device was active, streaming a steady flow of upstream data. It was coming from Lydia's new laptop, the one I'd paid for, which was plugged directly into the wall. She was bypassing the Wi-Fi she had complained about. She was sending something big. I did what I'm paid 6 figures a year to do. I initiated a packet capture, snagging a copy of the data stream. It was encrypted, of course, but she was sloppy. She was using a consumer-grade VPN, not a corporate one, and the email protocol she was using had a known vulnerability. It took me less than 90 seconds to intercept the session token and decrypt the payload. She was sending a single, massive PDF file to an encrypted email service I'd never seen her use before, one favored by people trying to hide transactions. The recipient was an attorney I didn't recognize. The subject line was AC, Financial Authorization, Final. AC, Aubrey Calloway. My blood turned to slush. My hands went numb, but my fingers kept moving. I downloaded the file, rerouted the packet so her sent message would look successful, and opened the PDF on my own secure laptop. It wasn't one document. It was a stack, 150 pages of dense legal text, powers of attorney, bank authorizations, waivers, a new last will and testament for my father, which I scanned quickly. It was exactly what she'd described in the email I'd seen before. Evan got everything. I got the sentimental items. But that wasn't the worst part. The last 10 pages were for me. They were financial authorizations granting Lydia and Evan full, unconditional, and irrevocable power of attorney over all my personal holdings, my Ironwall stock, my private investment portfolio, my condo. It gave them the right to manage, leverage, and dispose of all assets in my name. It specifically authorized them to take out loans against my property, a 7-figure line of credit, secured by my portfolio. And at the bottom of all 10 pages, in perfect flowing script, was my signature. It was my signature. It was a flawless forgery. I recognized the slight upward tilt of the Y, the exact way I looped the A. She had practiced. She had taken one of the bank forms I'd signed for the household accounts and traced it, digitized it, and applied it to a document that would effectively end my life. I stared at it. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't greed. This wasn't manipulation. This was annihilation. This was a plan to hollow me out, take everything I had ever built, and leave me with the debt, the blame, and the shell of my erratic self. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I went into lockdown, the way I do during a level 5 security breach. I closed the file. I wiped my digital tracks from the router, erasing the logs of my own activity. I reactivated the guest Wi-Fi. Then I walked calmly to my car, drove 10 miles to a dark service road, pulled over, and shook so violently I thought my teeth would crack. When the shaking stopped, I made the call. Monica Reyes. Her voice was sharp, even at 10:30 at night.
Monica, it's Aubrey Calloway.
Aubrey? Is Ironwall? Are you okay? Did we get breached again? No, I said, my voice a dead, flat thing. I did. Personally. I need a lawyer. I need you. I told her everything. The PDF, the forged signature, the 7-figure loan, the email to the new lawyer. I laid out the data. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was stripped of all social warmth. It was the voice of the prosecutor she used to be. Aubrey, I want to be very clear, she said. What you are describing is not a family squabble. This is not bad ethics or greed. This is a multi-pronged conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. This is a felony. Several. In fact, what do I do? I whispered. You do nothing, Monica commanded. You do not confront her. You do not tell your father. You do not change your bank passwords. You do not act scared, or angry, or suspicious. You are a target, and the predator thinks you are asleep. We need to let her complete the kill, or at least get close enough that we can prove intent beyond any shadow of a doubt. You're a data specialist, so go get me more data. She gave me a list. I need the file's metadata. I need the IP address of that lawyer. I need to know when she accesses that file, when she sends it, when she talks about it. I need a complete record of her movements. She's a security nightmare, I said, the professional in me taking over, a cold comfort. I can do that. Good, Monica said, because she won't just be facing a civil suit. Aubrey, if we get what we need, she'll be facing jail time. I went back to the house the next day, under the pretext of optimizing the network. My father was at his club. Lydia was at the spa. I had 2 hours. I was the IT girl, and I used it. I installed a new enterprise-grade router, telling my father it was a Christmas gift to stop the buffering. This router had a rootkit I'd designed myself. It logged every single packet of data, every keystroke, every IP address, and sent a silent, encrypted copy to my private server. Then, I went to the smart doorbell, the one Lydia loved for screening her deliveries. I enabled a beta feature, which was really just me activating the always-on encrypted audio recording. The microphone was sensitive enough to pick up any conversation in the grand hall and the kitchen if the doors were open. It was all admissible. It was my house, too, and she was committing a crime on the premises. I became a digital ghost in my own family home. The evidence piled up faster than I could have imagined. They were arrogant. They were sloppy. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I got an audio alert. I listened, my heart pounding, to Lydia in the kitchen, her voice bright and conspiratorial, talking to one of her friends. "Oh, the party this year is just the beginning," she trilled. "Graham is so happy, and after this Christmas, darling, we're finally going to have that cabin in Aspen. It's a gift. It's technically in Aubrey's name, but the bank account, well, let's just say the account will flow to us. It's all about good management, you know." A gift, in my name. She was already spending the money. Then, a call from Evan to Lydia, captured by the router's voice-over IP log. He sounded panicked, whiny. "Mom, the deal on the lakeside condos is going to close. The guy won't wait. Why can't I just ask her for the money?" "Absolutely not." Lydia's voice was a hiss. She's been controlling her accounts too tightly. She's in one of her moods. Don't be stupid. Evan, I told you. I have the papers. I have her signature. We just need to get her and Graham to sign the new estate package at the Christmas party. It's all together. They'll just think it's a family trust. Once that's filed, we have control of everything. Just wait until Christmas. For God's sake, don't ruin this. I saved the MP3. I encrypted it. I sent it to Monica. Her reply was immediate. "We have it. Conspiracy, attempt, fraud. We have it all." We met in person at a bright, sterile juice bar near my office, a place Lydia would never be caught dead in. Monica laid out a folder on the table. "Here's the plan," she said, sliding a document across to me. "It's not what you're going to want to hear." The plan was audacious. It was terrifying. It was perfect. "We don't stop this," she said. "We let her walk right into it. We let her have her party. We let her bring out those documents. We let her try. We are going to let her attempt to commit a felony in a room full of 50 witnesses, while your bug is recording every word." "My God, Monica," I said, my stomach churning. "In front of everyone? The neighbors? The children?" "Especially in front of everyone," Monica said, her eyes hard. "This is not a family misunderstanding. Aubrey, this is not a he said, she said. If you do this quietly, she will twist it. She will tell your father you're unstable. She will say you're lying, that you're the one who is greedy. She will use his love for her to poison him against you forever. The only way you win this is with a clean, public amputation. You have to expose the wound so everyone can see it. No more whispers. No more, well, Lydia is just difficult. No, this is a crime, and criminals need to be caught." I looked at the people walking by outside, their faces cheerful, their arms full of holiday shopping bags. I felt so cold. I have one condition. My cousins are bringing their kids. They're just little. I don't want them to see. I don't want them to be hurt. I don't want this to be violent." "It won't be," Monica said. "The violence is in the paperwork. We'll handle the rest." She paused, then looked at me. "There's one more person we need to bring in." "No one else. I can't." "Patrick Hale," she said. "Your uncle." I stared at her. "Uncle Patrick? How do you even know?" "Monica, he's a repairman. He can't be involved in this." Monica smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. "Aubrey, I run background checks on everyone. Your Uncle Patrick isn't just a repairman. Before he opened that shop, Patrick Hale was a senior forensic accountant and financial investigator for the Department of Justice. He spent 15 years tracking white-collar criminals who thought they were smarter than everyone else. He quit because, in his words, he was tired of seeing rich men walk. He didn't fail, Aubrey. He quit. I was stunned. The loser, the failure, the man Lydia dismissed as a joke, was a professional bloodhound. "He knows your father better than anyone," Monica pressed. "He'll know how to manage Graham when the walls come down. We need him." We met, all three of us. The next day, the same juice bar. I sat there, shaking, watching the door. Patrick came in, wearing his usual flannel jacket, his face etched with worry. He saw me. Then he saw Monica, in her razor-sharp suit, and he stopped. "What is this, Aubrey?" he asked. his eyes wary. "Who's this?" "This is Monica Reyes," I said. "She's my attorney, and I think you two might have worked in the same field." I told him. I laid it all out. The PDF, the forgery, the Aspen cabin, the plan to drain my accounts. Patrick listened. He didn't look shocked. He didn't look surprised. He just looked old and angry, a deep, cold, ancient anger that radiated from him in waves. He listened to the whole thing, his hands clasped on the table. When I finished, he just nodded. Once. "That woman," he said, his voice a low growl. "I knew she was a thief. I just didn't know how good she was." He looked at Monica. "A government investigator. Huh? You're good. You've been busy." "You're better," Monica said. "You've been watching her for 15 years. "I have," he said. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw the man he used to be, the investigator, the hunter. "I've suspected her for years. I couldn't get Graham to see it. He never wanted to see it." "He's going to have to see it now," Monica said. "So, what's the plan?" Patrick asked. Monica laid it out again. The Christmas Eve party, the witnesses, the trap. Patrick listened, and a slow, cold smile spread across his face. It was the scariest smile I had ever seen. "Oh, that's good," he said. "That's very, very good. A room full of witnesses. She'll have nowhere to run." He leaned back. "I'll play the part. I'm good at it." "What part?" I asked. "The part I always play," he said, his smile fading. "The drunk, useless uncle, the black sheep. I'll hang around the eggnog bowl. I'll make stupid jokes. I'll be the last person she ever suspects." "I'll have the account freeze orders ready to file," Monica said, packing her bag. "The moment she presents those papers, the trap is sprung. I'll have a team on standby." "And me?" I asked, my voice small. Patrick reached across the table and put his rough, calloused hand over mine. "You," he said, his voice softening just a fraction. "You just have to be what you've always been, the good, dutiful daughter. You just have to play her game. One last time." He squeezed my hand. "One last time, kid, and then we end it. For good." The 2 weeks leading up to Christmas Eve were the most surreal of my life. I was a double agent, living inside the conspiracy to defraud myself. Lydia was in a state of manic, triumphant bliss. She had never been kinder to me. She called me darling and sweetheart with a frequency that set my teeth on edge. She was the picture of a woman who believed she had already won and was now just running out the clock. "Oh, Aubrey," she chirped, catching me in the hallway 10 days before the party. She had a clipboard and was ticking off items. "This Christmas is going to be so special. The most special one ever." "Oh?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, my heart hammering a dull, heavy beat. "Yes, your father. He's finally agreed to get all the family finances in order. We're going to sign some papers, just some simple asset protection documents, right after dinner on Christmas Eve." She beamed, as if this were the most wonderful gift. "Just to make sure everything is protected, for the family, for Evan's future." I knew exactly what asset protection meant. It meant protecting her assets from me, using my assets to do it. "He's signing them?" I asked, feigning confusion, a hint of reluctance. This was the moment. "But some of that it's complicated, isn't it? Shouldn't I read them first?" Lydia's smile faltered, just for a millisecond. Her eyes hardened. This was the test. "Aubrey, darling," she said, her voice dropping into that familiar syrupy sweet tone of disappointment. "This isn't your world. This is high-level estate planning. It's about protecting your father, protecting us. Don't you trust your father? Don't you trust me? After all we've done to make you feel like part of this family?" She was using the family card, the guilt. It was her signature move. I let the silence hang. Then I looked down, pretending to be properly chastised. "No, of course I trust you. I get nervous with legal things. You know me. Just numbers. Click. The trap had snapped shut. The relief that washed over her face was so profound, so absolute, it was almost comical. She had been worried I'd fight. My feigned hesitation, my immediate, weak surrender, had just confirmed her entire narrative about me. I was a weak, spineless, erratic numbers girl who could be easily steamrolled. "Oh, good," she trilled, her mood instantly restored. She patted my cheek, her diamonds cold against my skin. "I knew you'd understand. You are such a good girl." Deep down. She was so high on her victory, so confident in my stupidity, that she went back to the party planner and made a new, last-minute addition. "And I want another ice sculpture," I heard her say into her phone, her voice vibrating with power. "Right in the center of the grand hall, by the tree. Yes, a new one. I want it to be the first thing people see. Have it say family first." While Lydia was ordering her monuments to irony, I was meeting Monica in a parking garage. "Here," Monica said, not bothering with a greeting. She passed me a tiny matte black object, no bigger than my thumbnail. It was a military-grade encrypted USB drive. "This is a clean, audio-enhanced copy of Lydia's Aspen cabin call and Evan's lakeside condo call. The audio is isolated. The metadata is tagged. This is what you give to the lead officer when they arrive. This is the insurance policy. Do not lose it." "Where am I supposed to—" "Put it in your evening bag," Monica said. "Keep it on your person. Don't let it out of your sight. This is the hard evidence." The next day, Uncle Patrick did his part. He showed up at the Harrington house, unannounced, carrying his old toolbox. "Patrick!" Lydia shrieked, her voice a scalpel. "What are you doing here? We're setting up for the party." "Just fixing the karaoke machine, Lydia," Patrick grunted, not looking at her. "Heard you were having a gospel choir. Thought I'd make sure the microphones were working for the sing-along." He was a ghost. She barely even registered him as a threat. He was just the help. Fine. Just don't touch anything, and use the service entrance." Patrick went into the grand hall. He was in there for 10 minutes. He didn't just fix the karaoke machine. He replaced the primary microphone, the heavy silver one Lydia always used for her welcome speech, with an identical-looking prop. The prop was a high-fidelity, wide-spectrum audio transmitter, linked directly to a secure cloud server that Monica and a team of forensic audio specialists would be monitoring in real time. Every word spoken into that microphone, every whisper within 20 feet of it, would be captured, time-stamped, and legally admissible. Patrick, the loser who ran a repair shop, had just bugged the entire operation. The guest list, that was Lydia's masterpiece of social engineering. I watched the RSVPs come in on the digital invitation platform she'd, of course, asked me to set up. She didn't just invite friends, she invited witnesses. Dr. Harrison, the neurosurgeon whose hospital I had just saved, Judge Miller, who sat on the county circuit court, 2 senior partners from my father's old real estate firm, men who understood contracts and money, the pastor from the First Presbyterian Church, a man Lydia had donated a significant, sum of money to, just last month, and of course, a smattering of the wealthiest, most connected, and most judgmental neighbors in Harrington Heights. It was a jury of her peers. She had hand-selected them to watch her triumph, to bear witness to the moment she and Evan were officially, publicly, anointed as the heirs. She wanted them to see her secure the family's legacy. Monica was thrilled. "It's perfect," she'd said. "She's gathered a room full of people whose professional credibility is unimpeachable. When this blows up, no one will be able to say it was just family drama. She's staging her own downfall." Christmas Eve, 5:00 p.m. I arrived 2 hours before the party was scheduled to start. Lydia asked me to come early, I told the security guard at the gate, a man whose salary I paid. 2, check the Wi-Fi for the guests. I let myself in the side door. The house was quiet, humming with the sound of ovens and the distant string quartet, who were tuning in the parlor. The air was heavy with pine and roasting meat. I went straight to my father's study. I opened my laptop. My rootkit on the new router was performing beautifully. The logs were pristine. I could see every device that had connected, every packet sent. I checked the logs for the past 48 hours. Yes, there it was, an hour ago. Lydia's laptop. A successful, verified login to Harborview Private Trust, the bank that held my main portfolio. She was checking the balance. She was making sure the 7-figure prize was still there, waiting for her. Gotcha, I whispered. I backed up the log file. That was proof of intent. A direct, overt act. She was already inside my accounts. A digital prowler. And then I saw it. On the corner of my father's pristine mahogany desk, where he would sit to sign his Christmas cards, was a single, elegant, blood-red folder. It was embossed with gold lettering. AC, Financial Authorization. My stomach dropped, even though I knew it was coming. My initials, my life, summed up in a folder, waiting for a forged signature and a final, fatal stamp of approval. I touched the cover. It felt warm. It was the bomb. It was the centerpiece of the entire evening. Lydia hadn't even bothered to hide it. She'd left it right out in the open, confident that I was too stupid, too weak, too cowed to ever look inside. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Monica. Team is in place. Local PD and a federal financial crimes unit are on standby at a staging area, 5 minutes away. They are fully briefed. They will not move on a simple family dispute or a yelling match. The signal is the word felony, or fraud, or forgery. Once they have cause to believe a crime is actively in progress, they will enter. Be smart. Be safe. The mic is live. I typed back. Roger, I'm in. I took a deep breath, walked out of the study, and composed my face. I put on the mask of the dutiful, slightly out-of-place daughter. I walked into the grand hall. The choir was practicing a soft, silent night. The caterers were polishing glasses. The ice sculpture, Family First, was gleaming under a dedicated spotlight, cold and perfect. I had one last piece of business. I was carrying a small, beautifully wrapped gift. Gold paper, green velvet bow, matching Lydia's theme. I walked to the massive tree, buried under a mountain of presents, and found a spot, tucked away in the back, where it wouldn't be immediately seen. I nestled it behind a massive box that was probably for Evan. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't a thoughtful book. It was a 2-terabyte, military-grade, encrypted solid-state hard drive. It contained a complete, offline backup of everything, every email I'd ever found, every packet log, every audio file, every forged document, every financial statement. It was the entire case, wrapped in a bow. It was my dead man's switch. If I walked out of this house with nothing, if they somehow managed to destroy my phone and the cloud server, that little box was the key to their destruction. My part was done. All the pieces were in place. Just then, I heard Lydia's voice, heralding her entrance. Ah, the string quartet. Wonderful. Let's start with something festive. And then my father's voice, booming, full of oblivious, festive cheer. He and Lydia appeared at the top of the grand staircase, arm in arm. He was resplendent in his velvet smoking jacket. She was glittering in her emerald silk. They were the king and queen of their kingdom. Graham Calloway raised his glass of champagne, his smile wide and genuine, beaming at the first guests who were arriving in the hall below. Welcome, everyone, he boomed, his voice echoing in the vaulted space. I am so glad you could join us, Lydia and I. We just feel that tonight, our family officially enters a new era of trust, a new beginning, to trust, to family. He and Lydia kissed, a perfect, cinematic kiss, to the applause of their adoring audience. I stood in the shadow of the staircase, the sound of their clapping like an avalanche in my ears. I looked at the shimmering tree, the lying ice sculpture, the microphone that was listening, the red folder waiting in the study, and the hard drive hidden under the branches. How ironic. They call this Christmas Eve, a night of miracles and goodwill. I call it a system-wide moral firmware update, And tonight, the patch was finally being deployed. Dinner was a performance in 3 acts. I moved the food around on my plate, a silent observer. The grand dining room, a space that could seat 30, was full to bursting. Lydia was at the head of the table, my father at the foot. She was in her element, holding court, her voice a bright, sharp instrument. She kept raising her glass. "A toast," she announced, her diamonds flashing as she lifted her champagne. "To my son, Evan." Evan, seated at her right, practically preened. He looked like a smug, overfed cat. "To his vision," Lydia continued, her eyes sweeping the table, daring anyone to disagree. "To his courage to build, to create. It's so easy to sit back and criticize, isn't it? To just sit at a computer all day and collect a paycheck." She didn't look at me, but every single person at that table, all our neighbors, my father's old partners, they all knew who she was talking about. She was painting me as a drone, a worker bee, in comparison to her visionary son. My stable salary, the one paying for the champagne in her hand, was suddenly a mark of shame, a lack of imagination. My father, Graham, just smiled, a vague, wine-soaked, proud of his whole family kind of smile. He was already checked out. "Here, here," someone shouted, and they all drank to Evan's vision. The meal dragged on. The food was rich, expensive, and tasteless. I felt the tiny, hard weight of the USB drive in my evening bag, a cold, square reality against my hip. Later, as the servers cleared the plates for dessert, a woman I recognized from the tennis club, her face a little too tight from a recent lift, leaned toward Lydia, her voice carrying across the table. "Lydia, darling, you've truly outdone yourself," the woman gushed, "but we're all dying to know, who is the real sponsor of this magnificent affair? Graham, is this all you?" Lydia let out a delighted, tinkling laugh. It was the laugh she used when she was about to deliver a killing blow. She reached out and placed her hand over my father's, her eyes shining with what looked like adoration, but I knew was pure, triumphant possession. "Oh, it's all Graham," she purred, her voice dripping with implications. "It always has been. He's just so generous, so capable." She looked around the table, her gaze landing on the other wives. "It just goes to show, doesn't it? A real man knows how to use money, how to make it work for his family. I am just the lucky beneficiary of his strength." The room practically swooned. She had, in one elegant sentence, credited my father with the wealth I had earned, affirmed his masculinity, and completely, utterly erased me from the equation. I was not the ATM. I was not even the computer girl. I was nothing. I was invisible. I just smiled, a small, tight smile, and took a sip of water. I glanced at Uncle Patrick, who was at the far end of the table, seated next to a potted palm as if he were in a time-out. He was watching Lydia. He wasn't eating. He just slowly, deliberately, winked at me. The signal, it was almost time. The Christmas Yule log, a magnificent creation of chocolate and meringue, was brought out, paraded, and served. As the last plates were cleared, Lydia stood up, clapping her hands like a giddy schoolgirl. "Everyone! Everyone!" she announced, her voice bright and commanding. "The dining room was lovely, but the main event is in the grand hall. The choir is ready, the gifts are waiting, and we have a very, very special family moment to share." She herded them, like a shepherdess in emerald silk. She guided the flock of 50 guests out of the dining room and into the grand hall, which was now lit only by the towering, glittering tree and 1,000 white candles. The Family First ice sculpture gleamed. The string quartet began to play a soft, reverent, silent night. It was a stage, and she had set it perfectly. She directed the guests to form a loose semicircle, facing the tree. She then guided my father, her king, to a large, throne-like armchair she had positioned perfectly in the center, a small table beside it, and on that table, I saw it, the blood-red folder. "Graham, darling, sit, sit," she cooed. She picked up the folder and held it to her chest, as if it were a holy text. "My dearest friends," she began, her voice taking on a tremor of fake, emotional gravity. "My family," she gestured to the guests. "Thank you for being here to witness this. As you know, family is the most important thing to Graham and me." She looked at Evan, who stood beside her, his chest puffed out. "And to protect our family, to protect the legacy that Graham has built, and to provide a secure future for our son." "Evan," her voice broke, just a little, a masterful touch. "We are just going to sign a few small family papers to formalize our trust, to protect his and our future." She opened the red folder. She presented it to my father, along with a heavy gold-topped pen. "Right here, darling." My father, his face soft with champagne and paternal pride, took the pen. He was about to sign. This was it. "Excuse me," I said. My voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was calm, clear, and it cut through the reverent hush like a shard of glass. 50 heads turned to me. Lydia froze, the pen halfway to the paper. My father looked up, blinking, as if just noticing I was in the room. "I'm sorry," I said, taking a single, measured step forward into the light of the tree. "Lydia, what are those?" Lydia's smile was a rictus. "Why, they're just the family papers, Aubrey, what I was just talking about." Her voice was tight, a warning. "I know," I said, still calm. "But I just noticed. My initials are on the folder. A.C. Financial authorization. Since my name is on it, can I read it before my father signs?" The air in the room changed. It went from festive to ice cold in a single second. The string quartet trailed off, one violin hitting a squeaky, uncertain note. I saw it, in the corner of my eye, Mrs. Harrison, the doctor's wife. She thought this was part of the special moment. She thought this was the dutiful daughter, checking the details. She raised her phone, the little red light on its camera winking on. Across the room, 2 or 3 other guests, assuming this was a Kodak moment, did the same. They were all pointing their cameras, ready to capture the Rave. Lydia's face, for 1 second, was pure, unadulterated venom. She had not expected this. She had expected the cowed, silent girl. "Don't be silly, Aubrey," she hissed, her voice a low, vicious whisper that the front row could hear. This is a formality. This is about family trust. It's rude of you to question this. You're being disrespectful, in front of our guests." She was accusing me. She was trying to shame me back into my box. I held her gaze. I didn't back down. I took another step forward and gently, firmly, took the red folder from her hands. My father just watched, his hand, holding the pen, hovering uselessly in the air. "I'm not being disrespectful, Lydia," I said, my voice projecting just a little bit more, ensuring the phones could pick it up. "I'm just being careful. As the computer girl, I'm trained to read the fine print." I opened the folder, and I flipped past the pages my father was supposed to sign. I flipped to the back, to the 10 pages that would end my life. "Oh, this is strange," I said, my voice full of mild, theatrical confusion. "These pages, they're for me. They're authorizations. For my stocks, my condo, my bank accounts." Lydia's face was white. "Aubrey, give me the papers. You are ruining Christmas." She made a lunge for the folder. I held it up, out of her reach, and now, my voice was no longer calm. It was loud. It was clear. It was the voice of a CEO addressing a hostile boardroom. "I'm not ruining anything. Lydia, I'm just asking a question." I held up the last page, the one with the digital signature. I angled it toward the guests, toward the cameras. "My question is this. If I'm supposed to sign these tonight, then why is my signature already on them?" Gasps, real, audible, shocked gasps. The guests weren't confused anymore. This wasn't a family moment. This was a crime scene. "Lydia," snapped. The mask of the gracious hostess didn't just slip. She tore it off and threw it into the fire. Her face contorted into a mask of pure primal rage. Her eyes were wide, her mouth a thin, ugly line. "You bitch," she snarled, a low, guttural sound. "You ungrateful little bitch." She didn't just lunge this time. She attacked. She grabbed for the folder. Her nails, those perfect, blood-red manicured nails, raking across the back of my hand, tearing the skin. I held on. "No, Lydia, these are evidence." "Give them to me," she shrieked, and with all her strength, she slapped me. Her hand, heavy with her diamond rings, cracked across my left cheek. My head snapped back with a force that sent a jolt of white-hot pain down my neck. The room exploded in sound. People screamed, "Oh my God! Lydia, no!" But she wasn't done. She was in a blind fury. Her plan, her masterpiece, all of it crumbling in front of her hand-picked audience. She was a cornered animal. She grabbed my shoulders and she shoved me. I'm strong, but I was in 4-inch heels, on a slippery rug, and I was not expecting it. I stumbled backward, my arms flailing. I crashed into the base of the 20-foot Christmas tree. It was a nightmare of tinsel and pine. The massive, beautiful tree shuddered, as if in pain. Ornaments, the antique, glass ones my mother had collected, rained down, shattering on the hardwood floor with a sound like tiny, brittle gunshots. I hit the trunk hard, the rough bark scraping my back through the silk of my dress. I landed in a heap of broken glass, gold ribbon, and pine needles, the red folder still clutched in my hand. I tasted copper. I put my gloved hand to my mouth. I pulled it away. A bright, vivid smear of red blood on the white fabric. The corner of her ring had split my lip. I looked up. The scene was frozen. The choir was huddled by the piano. The guests were a sea of pale, horrified faces. Their phones still held up, still recording. The string quartet had fled. And the lights, the thousands of tiny, twinkling, warm white, Christmas lights on the tree were blinking on and off, illuminating the scene. They flashed on the blood on my glove. They flashed on the broken glass. They flashed on Lydia, who was standing over me, her chest heaving, her hair wild, her emerald dress stained with something. It was beautiful, in a terrible final way. "Lydia." My father's voice. It was weak, a pathetic, reedy sound. "Lydia, come on, now. That's enough." He hadn't moved from his chair. He hadn't stood up. He hadn't come to my aid. He just sat there, the golden pen still in his hand, watching his wife bleed his daughter under the Christmas tree. I saw a flurry of motion. My cousins, their faces white with terror, were grabbing their children. Go to the car, now, don't look," one of them was hissing, pushing her 2 small, crying daughters, who were in matching velvet dresses, toward the front door. The children were being shielded, they were being protected, but no one was protecting me. Lydia was not done. She was glaring at me. This thing at the base of her perfect tree, this bug, this error in her code. "You've ruined it," she screamed, her voice a raw, broken shriek. "You've ruined everything, you ungrateful, selfish worm." She raised her hand again, her right hand, her slapping hand. She was going to hit me again. She was going to hit me while I was down, bleeding, in front of 50 people. I flinched, bracing for the second blow. But it never came. Because in that split second, a new figure entered the circle of light. Uncle Patrick. He had moved with a speed that was terrifying, all his pretense of being a slow, rumpled loser gone. He was no longer the drunk uncle. He was the investigator. He didn't touch her. He didn't yell. He just stepped between us. And on his way, his hand, his big, calloused repairman's hand, shot out and gripped the massive, heavy, crystal punch bowl from the buffet table, the one that was still half full of that thick, creamy, bourbon-laced eggnog That split second, the one where Lydia's hand was raised to strike me a second time, felt like it lasted 1,000 years. The room was a vortex of light and sound. The Christmas lights blinked on, off, on, off. The horrified faces of the guests were a silent Greek chorus. My father's hand, still clutching the golden pen. My blood, warm on my lip. Lydia's arm was tensed, the muscles in her neck corded, her face a grotesque mask of rage, unrecognizable. And then, shadow. Patrick moved. He wasn't the rumpled, slow, loser uncle. He was a predator. He moved with a low, balanced, terrifying grace. He didn't rush. He arrived. In one fluid motion, he cut between us. His left hand, the big, calloused one, shot out and enveloped the base of the massive 2-gallon crystal punch bowl. He didn't just grab it. He palmed it, as if it weighed nothing. He raised it. He held it high, the light from the Christmas tree refracting through the expensive cut crystal bowl. The thick, pale yellow eggnog sloshed, heavy and viscous. It was a toast. It was a libation. It was a judgment. Lydia, her hands still raised, froze. Her brain, addled by rage, couldn't process this new, absurd image. Her victim was supposed to be me, but now, her bête noire, the family joke, was standing before her, holding a king's ransom of dairy and bourbon aloft. "Lydia," Patrick said. His voice was not a slur. It was a cold, clear baritone. "Merry Christmas." And he upended the bowl. He didn't just pour it. He anointed her. A full 2 gallons of thick, rich, ice-cold eggnog cascaded over her head. The sound was obscene, a thick, wet glug sploosh that echoed in the silent room. It hit her perfectly coiffed, expensive blonde hair with a wet, heavy splat. For a half-second, she was a statue, a perfect, glittering emerald and diamond statue with a crown of thick, pale yellow cream. Then it broke. The eggnog, laced with nutmeg and cinnamon, ran. It ran down her face, into her open, shrieking mouth. It plastered her hair to her skull. It ran in thick, obscene rivulets down her neck, over her diamond necklace, and down the front of her $10,000 emerald silk gown. The silk, which had shimmered, instantly darkened, clinging to her body, heavy and ruined. A dusting of nutmeg stuck to her eyelashes. The entire 50-person room went silent. Not just quiet, silent. The kind of silence that has a sound, a pressurized, ringing, absolute void. The string quartet was gone. The choir was frozen, their mouths open in a silent, "Oh." The guests were statues. Even the blinking lights of the tree seemed to pause. The only sound in the entire vast, vaulted hall was the sound of the eggnog. Drip, drip, drip. It dripped from the strands of her hair. It dripped from her chin. It dripped from the hem of her ruined dress, forming a thick, creamy, pale yellow puddle on the antique, dark wood floor. I was still on the ground, leaning on one hand, and I just watched. Lydia stood there, sputtering, blinking, her hands, which had been claws, now just limp, useless, eggnog-covered fins. She was no longer the queen. She was not the hostess. She was a joke, a wet, sticky, bourbon-smelling joke. Patrick, his hand now empty, lowered the crystal bowl. He placed it carefully, almost gently, back on the buffet table, as if he had just served himself a cup. Then he looked at her. His face was not angry. It was not amused. It was just calm. "Consider it a baptism, Lydia," he said, his voice carrying easily into every corner of the silent room, "for all the years you spent trying to steal my niece's life." The silence broke. It didn't break with a scream, but with a hiss, a collective inhalation. Mrs. Harrison, the doctor's wife, let out a tiny, choked, "Eep!" Judge Miller's face was unreadable, a perfect mask of judicial neutrality, but his eyes were fascinated. He was watching a case unfold. I saw 2 of my father's old business partners, Men Lydia had always dismissed as boring turned their heads to hide their faces. Their shoulders were shaking. They were laughing. And the phones, which had perhaps been lowered, were now all of them, raised again, the little red lights gleaming in the dark. They had captured the slap, and now they had captured the baptism. Lydia's brain finally rebooted. The shock gave way to a rage that was so profound, it was almost nuclear. "You!" she shrieked, a sound that was half gargle, half scream, as she wiped a glob of eggnog from her eye. "You're insane! You're drunk! Security! Somebody call the police! He's assaulting me!" She pointed a sticky, trembling finger at Patrick. Graham, do something! Your loser brother just… He… do something!" My father, who was still in his chair, looked completely, utterly paralyzed. He looked from Lydia, this dripping, screaming creature, to Patrick, who looked like a man who had just finished a routine chore. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Patrick ignored her. He ignored my father. He ignored the 50 pairs of eyes. He just raised one hand, palm out, the universal sign for stop. "Everybody just take a breath," he said, his voice the very definition of calm. The room, which had begun to bubble with whispers, went quiet again, awaiting his next move. He turned his back on Lydia, a calculated, devastating insult. He reached into the inner pocket of his old, rumpled vest, the one she'd mocked him for. He pulled out a small, clear plastic bag, the kind you'd put a sandwich in, and inside it, something tiny, black, and square. He undid the Ziploc seal, his movements deliberate, unhurried. He shook out the contents into his palm. It was a USB drive, a tiny, simple thumb drive. He held it up, between his thumb and forefinger, so the whole room could see it. Lydia stopped screaming. She just stared at the little piece of plastic, her eggnog-caked face a mask of sudden, profound confusion. What is that?" she stammered. Are you mad? Get out! Get out of this house! You think you're the only one who knows how to cheat the system. Lydia?" Patrick said. He was talking to her, but he was projecting, like a stage actor. He wanted the phones. He wanted the judge. "You think because I fix toasters, I'm stupid?" He started to walk, a slow, deliberate pace, toward the karaoke machine and the massive 80-inch television screen above the fireplace. "I used to investigate people exactly like you for a living," he said, his voice a casual, informative lecture. 15 years. I spent at the Department of Justice, forensic accounting, white-collar crime. I tracked men who stole millions with nothing but a fountain pen and a good story. I did it for so long. I got tired of it. I got tired of watching them walk. He stopped in front of the AV system. Lydia, her face a mixture of eggnog and dawning, uncomprehending terror, was frozen. "But you, Lydia," he said, shaking his head, almost in pity. "You're not even one of the smart ones. You're just greedy, and you're sloppy." He reached behind the laptop, which the DJ had been using, and plugged the USB drive directly into the karaoke machine's main port, the machine he had fixed. "And now," he said, turning to the stunned, silent crowd, he picked up the heavy silver microphone, the prop, the bug. "We're all going to watch a very special Christmas movie. Please, pay attention." He hit a button on the machine. The massive television, which had been displaying a cozy, crackling Yule log, flickered. It went blue, then it went black. There was no video. There didn't need to be. Patrick's voice, amplified by the microphone, boomed. "Audio, file 1. A half-second of static, and then her voice, Lydia's voice, pristine, crystal clear, echoing from the high-end, surround sound speakers built into the walls. "Oh, the party this year is just the beginning," her voice trilled, bright and conspiratorial, the voice she had used with her friend. "And after this Christmas, darling, We're finally going to have that cabin in Aspen. It's a gift. It's technically in Aubrey's name, but the bank account, well, let's just say the account will flow to us. It's all about good management, you know." "Oh my God," Mrs. Harrison whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Lydia's face, under the cream, had gone from white to a sickly mottled gray. That's fake," she stammered. "Wait," Patrick said, his voice a low rumble. "It gets better." Audio, file 2. A new voice, whiny, panicked, desperate. Evan's voice. "Mom, the deal on the lakeside condos is going to close. The guy won't wait. Why can't I just ask her for the money?" And then, Lydia's voice, hissing in reply. "Absolutely not. She's been controlling her accounts too tightly. She's in one of her moods. Don't be stupid. Evan, I told you, I have the papers. I have her signature. We just need to get her and Graham to sign the new estate package at the Christmas party. Once that's filed, we have control of everything. Just wait until Christmas. For God's sake, don't ruin this." The room was no longer silent. It was a sea of whispers. Her signature? Control of everything? Did you hear that? He said lakeside condos. My God. Graham. Evan, who had been standing near the tree, trying to be invisible, looked like he'd been shot. He was pale, sweating, and he was backing slowly, toward the side door. Lydia finally, truly, understood. This was not a social embarrassment. This was a tactical, high-level, public execution. "Turn it off!" she screamed, a raw, inhuman sound from the very depths of her being. She forgot Patrick. She forgot the guests. She just saw the machine. "It's lies! It's fake! He's... Turn it off!" She lunged. She was a dripping, sticky, emerald-green missile of pure panic, launching herself at the karaoke machine, her hands out, her nails ready to claw the wires out of the wall. Patrick didn't even flinch. He just sidestepped, his body solid as a brick wall, and put one arm out, blocking her path. He didn't grab her. He didn't push her. He just stood there, an immovable object. She slammed into his forearm and bounced off, stumbling backward, her feet slipping in her own eggnog puddle. And in that moment, as she was screaming at Patrick, as all eyes were on the failed, pathetic lunge, I stood up. I rose from the floor, a single, fluid motion. My dress was torn at the shoulder. My back was stinging from the pine. My hand was bleeding. My cheek was a hot, throbbing drum. I tasted the blood on my lip, then wiped it away, not with a delicate glove, but with the back of my bare hand, smearing it. I walked out from under the tree. I was no longer in the shadows. I was in the center of the room. My eyes were not on Lydia. They were on my father, who was still in his chair, a statue of impotence. They were on Judge Miller. They were on every guest, every phone. I bent down and picked up the blood-red folder, now spattered with drops of eggnog, and was that a drop of my blood? It was a Jackson Pollock of our family's dysfunction. I held it up, high, the same way Patrick had held the punch bowl. My voice was raw. It was shaking, but not from fear, from 15 years of compressed, frozen rage, finally thawing. "If anyone was still wondering," I said, my voice cutting through her screams, "how I've been beat for the last 15 years. I held the folder up, the AC financial authorization gleaming in the light. "This is how..." It wasn't just with her hands, it was with paper. My voice, raw and amplified by the stunned silence, was still hanging in the air. I was standing in the center of the wreckage, holding the eggnog-spattered, blood-dotted red folder, a smoking gun. Lydia was still sputtering. "It's fake. It's all fake. He's lying." "Are they Miss Calloway?" A new voice. It was not a shout. It was a clear, cold, precise blade of a voice that sliced through the entire hall. It had no emotion. It had only authority. Every head turned, including mine. Standing in the grand entryway, framed by the carved oak, was a woman. She was not a guest. She was in a perfectly tailored, razor-sharp black suit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She was holding a sleek black leather briefcase. It was Monica Reyes. She walked into the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor with a sound like a gavel. She did not look at Lydia. She did not look at my father. She did not look at the broken ornaments or the puddle of eggnog. She walked directly to the center of the room, stopping a respectful 5 feet from me, as if we were in a courtroom. "Good evening," Monica said, her voice now projecting to the entire room. The guests, this jury of 50, were frozen, their phones still raised. "My name is Monica Reyes. I am an attorney with the firm of Reyes and Associates. I represent Ms. Aubrey Calloway." She paused, then looked around the room, making eye contact with Judge Miller, who just nodded, slowly, as if recognizing a fellow apex predator. And Monica continued, her voice dropping a fraction. "I appear to be the designated representative for the sudden, violent return of sanity to this household." Lydia, still dripping, her face a mask of eggnog and hate, shrieked, "I don't know who you are. Get out of my house. This is a private family matter. I'm calling the police." "That won't be necessary," Monica said calmly. "I've already done that. They are waiting, respectfully, at the end of the driveway for the signal that a crime was, in fact, in progress, and your assault on my client." She gestured to my bleeding lip and the shattered glass. Combined with this, she pointed to the red folder in my hand. Was that signal. "It's fake," Lydia screamed, finding her one pathetic word of defense. "It's all fake. Patrick, that nothing, he faked those recordings. It's a setup. They're jealous." "Fakery is a fascinating legal concept, Mrs. Calloway," Monica said. Walking to the small table beside my father's throne-like chair, she opened her briefcase. Click, click. The sound of the latches was as loud as a gunshot in the silent room. She took out a stack of documents. They were not spattered with eggnog. They were pristine. "Let's talk about what's not fake," Monica said. She held up the first document. "This, for example, this is a printout of the server logs from the Harrington Guest Wi-Fi router, installed and maintained by my client. These logs show your laptop, Mrs. Calloway, at 5:03 p.m. this afternoon, successfully logging into the Harborview Private Trust, using a password and credentials that belong exclusively to Ms. Aubrey Calloway. Is this log fake?" Lydia's mouth opened and closed. "Or this," Monica continued, pulling out another document. "This is a copy of the official wire request correspondence you sent 2 days ago to that same bank, from this very house, attempting to establish a 7-figure line of credit against my client's portfolio. A portfolio, I might add, that has nothing to do with this family. Is this correspondence fake?" She looked around the room. "And this," she said, her voice full of a cold, terrible weight, "is a copy of the exact document my client is holding, the AC, financial authorization. We pulled this from your own lawyer's server, after he received your email, the one you sent from this house on Thanksgiving." She looked directly at Lydia, who was visibly shaking, the eggnog drips now indistinguishable from the sweat of pure animal terror. "My client," Monica announced, her voice a final, damning judgment, "is not erratic. She is the victim of a multi-year systematic conspiracy, perpetrated by you and your son, Evan Cross, to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. You have used her love for her father as a weapon to extract millions, and when that wasn't enough, you decided to forge her signature to steal the rest. That is not a family dispute, Mrs. Calloway. That is a felony." Felony, the word, the signal. My father, Graham, finally rose from his chair. He was white as a ghost, his hands trembling. He looked at Monica with a lifetime of practiced patrician condescension. but it was ruined by the pure panic in his eyes. "Now, wait just a minute," he stammered, his voice reedy. This is a misunderstanding. Lydia told me. She told me Aubrey was willing. She said Aubrey wanted to help Evan, to formalize her contributions. She said it was a gift." Monica just stared at him. She didn't even blink. "A gift," Monica repeated, her voice flat. She reached back into her briefcase and pulled out a single, final sheet of paper. "Is that why, on December 2nd, Lydia sent an email to her private attorney, not your family attorney, Mr. Calloway, an email which reads, and I quote, 'We must accelerate the timeline. Graham is wobbly, but he'll sign. As for Aubrey, she is the main problem. But once the papers are filed, it won't matter. She will never, ever dare to sue her own father. We'll be insulated.'" Monica placed the printed email on the table in front of him, next to the golden pen. My father looked at the piece of paper, he read it, and he deflated. The last of the heir, the last of the pride, the last of the Graham Calloway persona. Just left him. He collapsed back into his chair, his hands covering his face, a broken, empty, pathetic old man. Lydia let out a sound, a low, wounded, animal keen. It was the sound of a predator caught in a steel-toothed trap. And at that exact moment, as if summoned by the word felony itself, there was a new sound, a heavy, polite, official knock at the still-open grand entryway. Every head turned. 2 uniformed police officers, their faces calm and impassive, stepped into the hall. They were followed by a man and a woman, both in sharp, dark, federal-looking suits. The man in the suit glanced around, his eyes taking in the tree, the ice sculpture, the dripping, screaming woman, the bleeding woman, and the crowd of 52 recording witnesses. He looked at Monica. "Ms. Reyes?" "Agent Harrison," Monica said, nodding. "Thank you for coming. The situation is contained." Lydia saw them. She saw the uniforms, and her entire strategy shifted. The rage vanished, replaced by a sudden, theatrical, gut-wrenching victimhood. "Oh, thank God!" she shrieked, her voice suddenly high and full of tears, her hands clasped to her sticky chest. "Officers, thank God you are here. Arrest him!" She pointed a trembling, eggnog-covered finger at Patrick, who was still standing, silent and watchful, by the karaoke machine. "Arrest him! That man. He's insane. He attacked me. He's been stalking me. He and her." She pointed at me. They've fabricated all this. It's a setup. They drugged me. They're trying to steal my house. Oh, please, officers, help me. I'm a victim." It was a brilliant performance, truly, worthy of an award. The tears were real, mixing with the cream on her face. The lead officer, a tall, older man with a patient face, just looked at her. He didn't move. The man in the suit, Agent Harrison, just sighed. He looked at Patrick. "Sir, did you pour that substance on this woman?" "Yes, I did," Patrick said, his voice calm. "Right after she assaulted my niece, split her lip, and knocked her into the Christmas tree. You can check the 50-plus videos in this room, or you can check her knuckles, or my niece's face." Agent Harrison looked at Lydia. His eyes were cold. "Ma'am, we're not here for an assault charge. We're here from the Financial Crimes Unit, and we're here to talk about these." He gestured to the audio recordings, which were still playing on a low, damning loop. "That's fake!" Lydia shrieked. Agent Harrison just motioned to the woman in the suit, who was holding a small professional audio recorder. "Ma'am, we have a warrant. We also have this. Let's listen." The agent hit play, and Lydia's voice, the Aspen cabin recording, filled the room, again, this time not from a karaoke machine, but from a federal agent's device. Lydia's victim act crumbled. She just stared, her mouth open, the lies dead on her lips. Agent Harrison then turned his attention, as if noticing him for the first time, to the pale, sweating, silent figure who was trying to merge with the wallpaper near the side door. "And you," he said, his voice casual, "you must be Evan Cross." Evan jumped, as if struck by electricity. I didn't do anything," he stammered. "No," Agent Harrison said, pulling a folded paper from his own pocket. "We were very interested in your emails, especially this one, the one you sent to your mother last week, the one that says, let's see. We have to get this done. We have to drain Aubrey's main account before she changes the passwords again. Just get the papers signed, and I'll handle the transfers." Evan looked at the paper. He looked at his mother, and in that moment, the last pathetic piece of his visionary persona crumbled. He broke. "It was her," he shouted, pointing at Lydia. "It was all her. I just did what she told me. I didn't know it was illegal. I thought it was just family money. She made me. It was her idea. All of it." Monica Reyes stepped forward, her voice cutting through his whining. "Mr. Cross?" she said, her voice full of a sudden, sharp, cold amusement. "Your personal checking account is not the family cookie jar. You are a 38-year-old man. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you're on tape. Right here." She tapped the karaoke machine, complaining that it wasn't happening fast enough. The guests, who had been a frozen wall, now moved. It was a subtle, subconscious shift. They moved away from Lydia. They moved away from Evan. They formed a tight, judgmental circle, their backs to the criminals, their faces turned toward us, toward me, and Patrick, and Monica. They were no longer an audience. They were a jury, and they had reached a verdict. The lead police officer stepped forward. "Mr. Evan Cross," he said, his voice a formal, bored monotone. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud." He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. Evan just dissolved. No, wait. Dad, Mom, do something. Graham." My father, Graham, made one last, desperate, pathetic attempt. He stumbled forward, his hands out, appealing not to the police, but to Monica. "Please," he begged, his voice a wet, broken whisper. "Please, Ms. Reyes, this is a family matter. We can fix this. In private. In silence. Think of the scandal. Think of the family. We can pay her back. Please, don't do this." Monica looked at him. There was no pity in her eyes. There was no anger. There was just a final, cold, professional assessment. "Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice final, "you had 15 years to fix this in silence. You had 15 years where this was a family matter. You chose to do nothing. You chose to let this woman, this criminal, assault and rob your daughter in private. You forfeited the right to family privacy when you let it escalate to a felony. This is not a family matter anymore. It is a criminal one." She nodded to the officer. The officer grabbed Evan's wrist. The click of the handcuffs, that sharp, metallic snick-snick, was the loudest sound in the room. Evan just wept, snot and tears running down his face. You can't!" Lydia shrieked, lunging, but the other officer put a firm hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, you are being detained for investigation. Please, stay still." And as the officer in uniform grabbed Evan by the elbow, cuffed and sobbing, and began to lead him, the visionary, the future of the family, out of the grand hall, my eyes drifted to the centerpiece. The $10,000 ice sculpture, the one that said, "Family First." It was melting. Under the hot lights, under the pressure, under the weight of 50 horrified stares, it was weeping. The F was slumping. The T was gone. Water was running in steady, fast drips from the reindeer's proud, frozen nose, a steady, relentless stream, just like the money I had poured and the tears I had cried. It was just an ugly, misshapen block of ice, and it was disappearing. Right in front of our eyes, Evan was gone. The heavy oak door clicked shut. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place in obscene, final, metallic punctuation. The officer had walked him out, his sobs, his pathetic, whining, "Mom, Dad, do something," echoing in the hallway, until the cold, clean, blessedly silent night air had swallowed him whole. The room, a tomb of 52 silent witnesses, was left with the wreckage. Lydia was no longer the dripping, hysterical victim. She was no longer the cornered animal. She was broken. She was standing, held loosely by the uniformed officer, in a puddle of her own making, a ruined, sticky, pathetic creature. But the denial was still there, a flickering, stubborn, toxic flame. "Graham," she whimpered, her voice a raw, eggnog-choked rasp. "Graham, are you going to let them? Are you going to let her?" She pointed a trembling, sticky finger at me. "And him," she pointed at Patrick. "Do this? It was a plan. They're jealous. They have always been jealous. Jealous of our life. Jealous of Evan's, his success. Tell them, Graham, tell them it's all a terrible lie." My father, Graham Calloway, was a man standing in the exact center of hell. He was adrift in the no man's land between the officer detaining his wife and me, his daughter, who was still tasting her own blood. He looked from the officer's firm, blue-sleeved arm on Lydia's silk dress to my split lip. He looked at the federal agent, who was now impassively bagging the red folder as evidence, and he looked at Patrick, who was standing, his arms crossed, a silent, immovable mountain. His eyes, those gray, tired, empty eyes, were darting back and forth, like a trapped animal, looking for an exit, a compromise, a way to make this not be happening. He was the living, breathing embodiment of 15 years of willful, cowardly avoidance, and the bill for his peace had just come due. This was my moment. The room was waiting for the next line. I stepped forward. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My cheek was a hot, throbbing drum. My hand was stinging. My back was on fire. But my voice was cold. If I could have a moment, I said. My voice, raw as it was, cut through Lydia's whimpers. Every guest, every officer, every agent, they all looked at me. I was standing in the center of the stage she had built. "I believe," I said, my voice gaining strength, "that Lydia was planning to give a Christmas speech tonight, a family-first speech. She had the ice sculpture made." I looked around the room, at the jury, at Judge Miller, at Dr. Harrison, at the pastor, whose face was a mask of pale, profound horror. "She was right," I said. This is a family moment, and it is one that has been 15 years in the making." I took a breath. "For 15 years," I began, my voice clear, steady, and amplified by the rage and the silence. "I have not been a daughter in this house. I have been an asset. I have been the bank. I listened tonight as you all," I gestured to the guests, "praised Lydia and Graham's generosity, this party, this performance. I paid for it. I paid for the choir. I paid for the $10,000 ice sculpture that's currently melting. I paid for the champagne that Evan," I glanced at the door, "was pouring, every last drop. But it wasn't just parties," I continued, my voice a relentless, factual monotone. "It was loans that were never, ever meant to be repaid. It started with $50,000 to save the house. Then it was $120,000 for property taxes. Then it was $250,000, $250,000 for a startup that was nothing but a wish printed on copy paper. And every Christmas, I would come home, and I would be given a thoughtful gift, a self-help book, how to win friends, how to be grateful, a lesson, to fix what was wrong with me, while my stepbrother, her son, was given cash, cars, a platform built with my money. And every time, I said, my voice dropping, every single time I tried to say no, every time I said, I can't, Lydia would deploy her most effective weapon. This was the hard part. I looked down, just for a second, to steady myself. She would talk about my mother. The room inhaled. My real mother, Ellen Hale Calloway, a woman Lydia never, ever met. She would tell me how heartbroken my mother would be to see me be so selfish, how my mother believed in family. She weaponized my grief. She took the memory of a dead woman and she used it as a tool, as a crowbar, to pry open my heart and my bank account. She turned my love for my mother into a guilt-powered ATM. Lies, Lydia shrieked, a raw, wet sound. You ungrateful whore. Lies. It's all lies. I didn't even look at her. In that exact moment, a hand, a large, rough, steady hand, landed on my shoulder. Patrick. He had moved to my side. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, his presence a solid, warm, unmovable wall. He wasn't protecting me. He was with me. He was anchoring me. And in that simple, silent gesture, he told the entire room, she is not alone, not anymore. The hand on my shoulder gave me the last ounce of strength I needed. I turned, and I looked at the one person I had not yet addressed. The man in the chair, my father. And you, I said. My voice was no longer cold. It was shaking, just a little, with the tremor of a 15-year-old wound being torn open. You watched. Graham flinched, as if I had physically struck him. You sat at those family meetings. You nodded. You told me it was my duty. You told me my entire life's work, my entire career, was a lucky break, a hobby that should be used to fund his failures. How many times, Dad? I asked. The word Dad was a broken, foreign thing on my tongue. How many times did you watch me sign a check for tens of thousands of dollars, with my hands shaking, with tears in my eyes, and you just sat there, and you let Lydia take it? How many times did you sell me, just for a quiet evening, just so you wouldn't have to argue, just so you could have peace? I stepped closer. How much was my life worth to you, Dad? How much did it cost for you to look away? Because you were so terrified, so pathetic, so afraid of being alone, that you let her eat me alive, just so you would have someone warm to sleep next to? The indictment hung in the air. The man, my father, finally broke. He looked up, his face a crumpled, wet, ruined mask of self-pity. I just, he stammered, his voice a pathetic whisper. I wanted peace, Aubrey. I wanted the family to be harmonious. I just wanted everyone to get alongs. I stared at him, and the last dying ember of a daughter's love for her father went cold. It turned to ash. That wasn't peace, I said, my voice now as dead and cold as the winter night outside. That was my silence. That was my submission. You didn't want harmony. You wanted to pretend, and I was the price. I turned my back on him. I turned back to the jury. To all of you, I said, my voice ringing out, strong and final. To all our friends, our neighbors, if you have ever been on a gifted vacation from Lydia and Graham, if you have ever received a $1,000 handbag for your birthday, if you have ever enjoyed their boundless generosity, I let the words land. I looked at every single, horrified, complicit face. You weren't enjoying their generosity. You were enjoying my terror. You were drinking my fear. You were complicit in a lie that I was forced to fund. I took a deep breath. This was it. So, this is my last Christmas speech. From this moment, On this night, I am no longer the bank of this family. I am no longer the ATM. I am no longer the lucky break or the worker bee. I looked at Graham. And I am no longer the daughter who will set herself on fire to keep you warm. I am done being the person who will be beaten with words, with guilt, with paper, or I touched my split, bleeding lip. With hands, under a Christmas tree. I looked at Monica. She nodded. Once, a sharp, clear signal. As of right now, I announced to the room, my attorney, Ms. Reyes, has electronically filed an emergency petition for a restraining order against Lydia Cross Calloway and against Evan Cross. Lydia's head snapped up, a new, sharp, real terror in her eyes. As of right now, I continued, Ms. Reyes has also filed the first in a series of civil suits to reclaim every single dollar that was stolen from me, under duress, manipulation, and fraud, and as of right now, she has already executed a freeze on every asset, every account, every line of credit that you, I looked at her, tried to attach to my name. It's done. There is no private solution, I said, my eyes finding my father's again. There is no family discussion. There is no getting along. There is just the law. There is no going back. I had said it. I had emptied myself of all of it. The poison was out. I was empty. I was free. I turned, finally, one last time, to the man who had been my father. He was just weeping, silent, pathetic, shoulder-shaking, empty old man tears. I looked at him, and then I looked at the woman he had chosen, the woman now being quietly, firmly, told by an officer that she needed to put her hands behind her back, her face, a mask of eggnog and pure, uncomprehending disbelief, her emerald dress, a ruined, sticky rag. You have a choice, Graham, I said. I didn't call him Dad. You can stay here. You can stay in this house that I paid for. You can choose to stay with the woman who just, in front of 50 people, assaulted me. The woman who just got arrested for trying to forge documents to steal your money, and my money. I let that sink in. You can choose to stay with her. I walked past him. I walked past the melting, pathetic, ugly ice sculpture. I walked toward the grand entryway, where Patrick was now holding the door open for me. But you cannot, I said, my voice final, as I stopped on the threshold. Ever expect me to stand in this room with you, ever again. My last words hung in the air. A final, irrevocable sentence. I was standing on the threshold, the cold night air at my back, the wreckage of the party in front of me. Patrick was holding the door. Lydia was still whimpering, Graham, don't let them. But her plea was cut short. Agent Harrison, the man in the dark suit from the Financial Crimes Unit, stepped forward. He ignored Lydia. He ignored my father. He addressed the officer who was standing, patiently, by Lydia's side. Officer, he said, his voice pure, procedural, and loud enough for everyone to hear. Pursuant to the official, time-stamped criminal complaint filed by Ms. Aubrey Calloway at 6 p.m. this evening, my office has just executed a temporary emergency freeze. All joint financial accounts held by Lydia Cross Calloway and Graham Calloway, which are linked to the fraudulent authorizations we have on file, are now sealed. All associated assets are frozen, pending a full investigation. Lydia's whimper turned into a full-blown shriek. No, my money! You can't! Graham, that's our money! That's where you're wrong, Mrs. Calloway, Monica Reyes said. She stepped forward, past me, back into the center of the room. She was no longer holding her briefcase. She was holding a different folder, a simple, plain, light blue folder. Not the blood red, embossed prop Lydia had created. This one looked real. You've been so worried, Monica said, her voice almost conversational, about the wrong accounts, the wrong assets. She didn't give the folder to my father. She didn't give it to the agents. She walked over to me, standing at the door, and held it out. "This," she said, "is your real inheritance. This is the justice that was wrapped in a different box." I was confused. I looked at the folder. I looked at her. I looked at Patrick. Patrick, for the first time, smiled. A real, warm, sad smile. "Go on, kid. Open it." My hands were shaking. My own blood was dry and cracking on my knuckles. I took the folder. I opened it. It was a legal agreement, a trust, a property deed. My eyes scanned the legalese, the words blurring, but I saw the names. My mother's name, Ellen Hale Calloway, my name, Aubrey Calloway, and Patrick Hale's name, as executor. And then I saw the signature at the bottom, Graham Calloway, dated last week. I don't understand," I whispered, looking up at Patrick. What is this?" Patrick finally, looked at my father. "Graham," he said, his voice not angry, just tired. "Tell her, for once in your miserable, cowardly life, tell her the truth." My father, Graham, the man in the chair, looked at the blue folder in my hands, and he wept. He wept, not the silent, self-pitying tears from before, but the great, gulping, broken sobs of a man who had lost everything and knew he deserved it. It was your mother," he choked out, his voice a pathetic, wet rasp. "Ellen, before she died, she knew. She didn't know Lydia, but she knew me." That one sentence was the single most honest thing he had said in 15 years. "She knew I was weak," he sobbed, his face in his hands. "She knew I couldn't be trusted, that I'd let someone in. So she and Patrick, they did this together." I looked at Patrick, my uncle, the loser, the repairman. "Your mother was the smartest woman I ever knew," Patrick said, his voice rough. "She took every asset that was hers, her own inheritance, her investments, the money she'd saved for the cabin by the lake, and she put it all into an ironclad, offshore trust. It was impenetrable. It was never part of Graham's estate. It was never, ever, within Lydia's reach." He looked at my father. "My job, your mother's last request to me, was to be the guardian of that trust, to watch over it, and to watch over you. Aubrey, the terms were specific. The trust, and everything in it, was to be transferred to you, and only you, on the day that I judged you were strong enough to see the truth and ready to defend yourself. So, I looked from Patrick to the papers. This, last week?" "Last week," Graham whispered, looking up, his face a ruin. Patrick came to me, after you had called him, after you'd found the forged papers. He came to my office. He didn't yell. He just put your evidence on my desk, the audio files, the signature. He showed me what she was." He pointed a shaking finger at Lydia. "He showed me her." "And then," Graham continued, "he put this folder on my desk, the blue one, the one your mother signed 20 years ago, and he said, 'Graham, Aubrey is ready. Your free ride is over. You will sign this paper, right now, which legally severs any and all connection you ever had to Ellen's trust, or I will personally walk this evidence into the federal building, and I will make sure you are indicted as a co-conspirator with her.' So I signed it. It was the first real thing, the first right thing I've done in 15 years. A new sound, a strangled, high-pitched, inhuman gasp. It was Lydia. She had been listening. The officer's hand was still on her arm, but she was staring at the blue folder. Her face, under the drying, cracking, grotesque mask of eggnog, was a horror of sudden dawning comprehension. The, the, the North Star Trust, she whispered, her voice a dry rattle. The locked trust. The one the lawyers said was impenetrable. The one I've been trying to crack for 10 years. That was hers? Patrick Hale looked at the woman who had mocked him, dismissed him, and called him a loser for 15 years, and he nodded. That was Ellen's, he said, not Graham's. You've spent a decade, Lydia. You've built this performance. You've committed wire fraud. You've forged signatures. You've destroyed this whole family, all to steal a prize that was never, ever, ever in the box. He let the words land. Lydia's knees buckled. She would have collapsed onto the floor, into her own puddle of shame and eggnog, if the officer hadn't been holding her arm. All this, she whispered, her eyes wide, vacant. All this for nothing? Worse than nothing, Mrs. Calloway, Monica Reyes said, stepping forward. All this for a conviction. She turned to Agent Harrison. Agent, she said, I believe my client and I are finished here. The karaoke machine, she gestured to the AV system, contains a hard drive with the original, high-fidelity, time-stamped recordings of the conspiracy you've heard. They are now, officially, all yours. I've also handed the officer the USB drive with the enhanced copies. The agent nodded. We have everything we need. The officer holding Lydia produced a second pair of handcuffs. Lydia Cross Calloway, she said, her voice a formal, bored monotone. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and aggravated assault. You have the right to remain silent. As the metallic click of the cuffs echoed in the hall, as Lydia began to sob, a new, dry, hopeless wail. My father, Graham, he stumbled toward me. He made one last, desperate lunge for family. Aubrey, he begged, his hands outstretched, his face a mask of desperation. Baby, please, please, we can fix this. Now that she's gone. It's just us. We can start over. A new Christmas. Please, don't leave me. I looked at his outstretched hands, the hands that had held the pen, the hands that had done nothing. I stepped back, out of his reach, out of the light of the house. There is no us, Graham, I said. My voice was quiet. It was final. There is no starting over. Not tonight. Forgiveness. That's a conversation for a different decade. Maybe. But tonight, I'm choosing safety. I'm not choosing blood. I'm not choosing family. I'm choosing me. I turned. Patrick was holding my wool coat, the one with the hard drive still in the pocket. He held it open, and I slid my arms into it. The simple, warm wool, a sudden, shocking comfort. He held out his other hand. In his palm was a small, plain, single key on a silver ring. This, he said, is yours. The cabin by the lake, the one your mother always dreamed of. The trust transferred the title last Tuesday. It's in your name. It's safe. I took the key. It was warm from his hand. Let's go home, he said. We walked. Monica fell into step just behind us. We didn't run. We exited. We walked past the silent, staring, shocked guests, who parted for us like the Red Sea. We walked past Judge Miller, who just slightly inclined his head, a gesture of respect. We walked past my father, who had sunk to his knees, a hollowed-out man in a velvet jacket, weeping in the grand entryway of a house he no longer owned. We walked past Lydia, who was being led, cuffed and dripping, screaming my name, screaming Graham, her voice a raw, ruined, pathetic thing. I stopped at the door. I turned, just once. I looked back at the whole, terrible, beautiful, ruined scene, the shattered glass, the melting sculpture, the crying choir, the dripping, arrested woman, the broken, kneeling man. I looked at Patrick, but I said it loud enough for the first few rows to hear. They really wanted to turn this Christmas, I said, my voice just a whisper, but it carried into the biggest robbery of my life. I looked, one last time, at the sticky, weeping, cuffed remains of Lydia Cross Calloway. I think, I said, it's only fair that they're the ones who ended up losing their wallet. And I stepped out into the night. The cold hit me. It was so cold. It was like a slap, like a baptism of my own. It stung my cheek. It stung my lip. But it was clean. The air was clean. The snow was falling. Tiny, soft, perfect flakes, landing on my hair, on my shoulders. Monica was already on her phone, walking ahead of us, her voice crisp in the night. Yes, he's detained. She's in custody. File the lis pendens against the Harrington property immediately. File the civil suit. File everything, now. Patrick and I didn't speak. We just walked, crunching on the fresh snow, to his truck. It was old. It was beaten up. It was a dark, dented, glorious blue. He unlocked the passenger side, and I slid in. The vinyl seat was cracked, and it was cold. It was the most real thing I had felt all night. He got in, the engine turning over with a low, reassuring rumble. The heater sputtered to life, blowing cold, then warm, air. We just sat there, for a full minute, the only sound the rhythmic thwack, thwack, thwack of the windshield wipers, pushing the gentle snow away. He looked over at me. His face, in the green glow of the dashboard lights, was just Patrick, my uncle, the loser, the guardian. "You okay, kid?" he asked, his voice low. I looked at my hands in my lap, the bloody, scratched one. I touched my lip. It was already swelling. "No," I whispered. My voice broke. "No, I'm not okay at all." I looked up at him, and I felt the first real tear, a hot, painful, clean tear, slide down my throbbing cheek. "But," I said, taking a shaky breath, "but for the first time in 15 Christmases, I don't feel like I just had to pay to be at the table. So, I guess this is the start of okay." He nodded. Once, he put the old truck in gear. He pulled away from the curb. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. I just looked in the side view mirror. The mansion, it was all lit up, every light blazing, the perfect, stupid, blinking Christmas lights, on, off, and now there were new lights, red and blue, the flashing lights of the 2 police cars that were now pulling up the long, winding, wealthy driveway, their arrival no longer a secret. The house looked like a movie set, a dollhouse, a fragile, ridiculous, expensive prop in a terrible, long-running family movie that had finally, just ended. I watched the house, and the lights, and the ghosts, shrink in the mirror until they were just a tiny, frantic, blinking dot. Then it was gone. I turned, and I faced forward, into the dark, and the snow, and the clean, cold, quiet road ahead. They thought they were writing a script, the one about the greedy, unstable, erratic daughter who was the problem. Tonight, I just rewrote the ending. This is the story of the woman who finally stopped letting people use the word family as an excuse to rob her blind. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. So drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a boost by hitting that hype button so my story can be heard. Thank you.